Hello, welcome to Life Preparations with Dorcas. And today we're going to be talking about 15 questions to ask yourself before you commit to a church. Now, you're wondering 15 questions to ask myself? Yes, because it is important that you ask yourself, you start from within and then you go outward. I know it is important to find out about the church. We'll talk about that in a separate video today. You're going to look inward to ask yourself if you'll be able to fit into that church so that your commitment is better. First, what are your values? You need to ask yourself what your values are because that will also help you to know if that church will be a good fit for you. Next, what is the vision of this church that you want to commit to? If that vision is not one that will take you to where you want to go to, then we will not advise that you commit to that church. But if this is a church that you have seen where they are coming from, you know where they are going to, you totally understand it, then it is advisable you can commit to the church because now you both are in alignment. Next, is your liking the church based on a particular kind of thought, or is it because there's a history of your family attending that church? That's why you just want to attend the church. You need to think if there is a bias for you wanting to attend that church. Next, you need to ask yourself, the sermon that is being preached in that church, is it relevant to me? Is it relevant to the challenges? Or is it relevant to my growth? What and what, all these questions will help you to know because trust me, the sermon in a church, it is very, very important. Next, you're going to be finding out about the church, what we'll call demography. Are there more younger people or older people? And if you're a family person, you're going to be checking, are there children? And if there are children, is there a children's church? Does it match my family needs? Trust me, it is important that the church you commit to, if you do have children, should have a church where your children can learn the Bible. That will complement what you're teaching at home, and everything will come together to build a child who knows the Lord. So, check out for these things. Or are you just going to the church because it's good for you and you forget your children? It is important that our children should have the word of God in a manner that they understand. Next, you're going to find out, how does this church settle conflicts or funny situations? How do they handle it? It is important because truth is there will always be one or two things that will come up, but how it is handled is super, super important. When there are conflicts, does the church just go to social media and say it out, or does it start by the example that we have in the book of Matthew? Okay, does it start by one on one? Oh, this is what has happened, this is how we're going to settle it. Or does it just bring in church elders? Because there's a step to this. You first of all start talking to the person. If it doesn't work, you get a brother in the church to go with you. Before you now talk about elders, it's stated clearly in the Bible. So how does the church follow all of this? It will be super important to you to know that. Next, what are the expectations of the church? What does the church expect of me? Do they expect me to attend service only, or they expect me to attend weekly activities? If the church is expecting you to attend weekly activities, it is important that you know which days these services take place. Also, will you be able to attend freely, or do you have to make sacrifices? If you do need to make sacrifices, are you willing to make those sacrifices to be in church during the week aside Sunday services? You should think about that. Okay, next, you should also check, are there opportunities for you to serve God in that place where you can express the gifts that God has given to you. Remember, in the Bible, in Romans chapter 2, verse 6 to 8, and First Corinthians 12, verse I think 11, 4 to 11, where it tells us about different giftings that God gives to his children. Is it prophecy? Is it teaching? Is it leadership? Whatever. Are there opportunities for you to express this? Remember, we have talked about ministry, that the church helps you to minister. Ministering is service. So if there's a point for you to be able to serve, it will be very, very fantastic. What about the overall atmosphere of the church? It is super important that you try to visit that church before you settle into the church. Not because you heard there's a miracle happening there, not because you heard, oh, once you belong to this church, you are now in a particular group or social strata. No. You should find out for yourself the atmosphere. Just like you enter into a building, maybe you want to buy a house, you just enter the building and you're like, oh, I like this building. It goes that way for the church. But just hold on. I have one of the sweetest points for you at the end of this video. What else should you be asking yourself about a church? You should ask yourself, the things that are important to me, does this church also hold them in high esteem? For example, baptism by immersion, if it's important to you, baby dedication, these are some of the things that are important to a lot of Christians. So, how does the church hold these things? What about the place of worship? Is worship a serious thing, or is this just a thing of entertainment? Those things that you hold dear to your heart, you should find out the stand of the church regarding those things. Next is support groups. Depending on the stage you are in life, there might be some needs for you to have a community or have a support group. You may be a widow, you may be a widower. And trust me, you're going to need a whole load of support. So remember to check out for these groups that are usually of help. Next, you're going to be asking yourself, am I willing to give my time, my energy, my money, my expertise, my skills to this church? Are there needs that by the grace of God I'll be able to meet? God be my help as I commit to this church. These are questions you should be asking yourself. Next, is the church welcoming to everyone, or is the church welcoming to some? If the church is welcoming to everybody, then you should think about committing. But if this church is a church that welcomes a few and turns other people away, then you should have a rethink. You should also find out the question of prayers. Have you prayed? Have you really, really, really prayed? Did God lead you to that church? Or you went, maybe as you attended one or two services, you had a leading that, okay, you can remain in this church. Have you really prayed? Trust me, the place of prayer is important. And that's why I saved this point for the last. Pray, pray, pray. Ask God to lead you. After you've checked all of these things from your inside, what does God have to say? Because again, God is the owner of the church. God owns the church. So ask God, Father in heaven, what should I do? Should I commit to this church or should I not? And if God tells you not to commit, please don't stay by force because you like the building or because your friends all attend this church or because for whatever reason. If God tells you to move, please move. If he tells you to commit to this church, even if the church looks really small, God is the owner of the church. Stay and commit to that church. I hope this has been very, very helpful. And if it has been very helpful to you, please share to as many people. Let them know about the church and how they can commit to a church. Thank you for watching and do have a beautiful day.